The priest blessed the whole of Israel, and in fact the entire world. The blessing is one of peace, light, and love to the world. The citrus and the palm are very special because they represent the diversity of the people of Israel. One Jew takes one side and another Jew takes the other side. That's the beauty of the people of Israel.
Boker Tov, everyone, and welcome to yet another exciting installation of the topic of Soulful Psalms. We are going to be talking this week about Psalm 84, which is considered, according to the critical theories of the 19th and 20th century, to be a pilgrimage psalm. And this seems to be a great occasion to talk about pilgrimage. So in Hebrew, regal, which simply means leg, or regalim, legs, is the kind of metonymy, all hands on deck, all legs to Jerusalem, the metonymy for the idea of a pilgrimage, of leaving your place and taking a sacred journey to a shrine or to a locale. The idea of pilgrimage is actually incredibly old, probably prehistoric. One of the projects I was involved in when I was living in Jerusalem was on a dig at a site in the northern Negev. It's kind of a caravania, that is, that it was a place where trade would stop and rest and be able to live in a secure location from one point to a next, but it was also a sacred center. And we dug up shrines and things like that were clearly meant to sort of take economic advantage of the fact that people were on the move, they felt insecure, they wanted the gods to protect them. And so there are many locations throughout the land of Israel, which, after all, was a location where people crossed in order to get to Egypt or to Mesopotamia or to Anatolia. And so we had a lot of those locations even before the Israelites came. The fact that there are so many locations in Israel who from antiquity have been known as Kadesh or Kodesh, which means holy, indicates that there were some kinds of shrines there. And so the idea of pilgrimage is almost as old as human beings. Today, we think about pilgrimage more in terms of Christianity and Islam. Islam, of course, has the famous Hajj, which every Muslim is supposedly required to do at least once in their lifetime, to travel to Mecca. In the Christian tradition, we have mostly Rome, but we have many, many locations throughout the world where you can, travel the camino, as they say in Spanish, the road, and it will take you from wherever you're starting to either multiple locations along the way or to one particular location. An example of multiple locations would be the Mission Camino in California, where you can go hundreds of miles walking and stop at different missions. And then a classic example of a destination, a single destination, would be Lourdes in France. The idea that you would travel to this one location where the Virgin Mary appeared, people get healed, or something along that. More common, probably for most people, is to go to Rome, and to a lesser extent for Christians, Jerusalem. Of course, through much of medieval and early modern history, Jerusalem was a relatively inaccessible location. So Rome won out and still, I think, wins out. But the idea that you could go to Rome, I saw it when I lived in Israel. Christian communities would come on the holiday of Sukkot, where it says in the book of Zechariah that all the nations will gather. People take that seriously, and congregations would put together tours and pilgrimage groups that would go, and they came by the busload to be in Jerusalem during Sukkot. Um, for Jews in particular, while it is traditional to want to either live or die in Jerusalem, there's no obligation to make pilgrimage. The obligatory pilgrimages that appear in the Bible of the holidays of Sukkot, Shavuot, and Pesach or Passover were really bound up with the temple. And when the temple was destroyed, the mitzvah of making the pilgrimage ceased, no longer applied. And so while inspired individuals can choose to go, it is not in any way mandatory. It's not a mitzvah, though it is valorous. It is to be praised to make a journey to Jerusalem, but there's no religious obligation because of the absence of the temple. When the temple was in operation, however, pilgrimage was a major part of it. And we have in the collection of Psalms pilgrimage poems, poems either meant to be recited on the way or were to be recited for pilgrims as they entered Jerusalem or the temple grounds. And a classic example of that is Psalm 84. Psalm 84. So that's our psalm for the day. Let's walk our way through it. We'll not do a point by point analysis, but I do want to call some of the themes to your attention. So it begins with a superscription for the leader on the getith, a musical instrument, we presume. For the Korahites, a psalm. And the Korahites was a clan of Levites who performed in the temple, so presumably they would have sung this on a pilgrimage holiday, and they would have sung it as a way of greeting the pilgrims coming from the hinterlands to the temple. And it begins with the phrase, Ma yididot mishkanotecha, which means how lovely is your dwelling place. Now, we encounter in our services regular phrasing like this. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha, od yichalucha sela. Fortunate is those who dwell in your house. This is the kind of thing. Now, what's striking about this version is Ashrei, the phrase for fortunate, is connected to fortune. You are enriched, is the basis for the phrase. You're enriched to be in the house of God. This one takes a slightly different tenor. All right. Yididot actually comes from intimacy or nearness. So it's quasi-erotic. We talk yedida. We talk about the idea of a couple being intimate with one another. So this carries the tenor, the register of a kind of arousal about being at the temple. So it's in the range of erotic theology. All right. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. I long, I yearn for the courts of the Lord. My body and soul shout for joy to the living God. And I don't know how many of you have actually had a chance to visit the Western Wall, but it really is a pretty emotionally powerful experience. And I think that's what they're describing. And then there's this wonderful little moment that anyone walking into the temple precincts would be aware of, and they invoke it in a way that connects you to what you're seeing, and that is, even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, in which to set her young near your altar, O Lord, my King and my God. Happy are those who dwell in your house; they will forever praise you. What that's actually referring to is the fact that even today, if you go to the Western Wall and you look at the wall, birds will create nests in the rocks and crannies of the human artifacts that make up the building. And that must have been true in ancient times also. So, as the visitor was entering the temple precincts, the temple grounds, they would look up and they would see birds flying in and out from their nest in their little crevices in the walls. And the temple was a living place. And so that image of the bird and their nest, the swallow and the sparrow, is a kind of touch point for the visual experience of the pilgrim. All right. Happy is a man who finds refuge in you. That's 6, whose mind is on the highways. And it's kind of elliptical, but what it's talking about is that your goal is to travel. You envision being at the temple with your fellow Israelites or your fellow Jews, and this is the center of your focus. And so you are headed in that direction with a kind of single-mindedness, with a kind of mindfulness, a concentration on being there in the presence of God in the form of the temple. Happy is the man who finds refuge in you, whose mind is on the highways. They pass through the valley of Vaca, regarding it as a place of springs. There's a couple of ways to translate this, but the idea is first of all, that you will be sustained with water on your journey, but also all rivers flow to Jerusalem, something along those lines. As if the early rain had covered it with blessing. That's a great image. Of course, water in the land of Israel is a profound blessing. You can't always assume it's going to be there. So when you see uh, the rocks and the rivers and the wadis flowing with water in the spring, you feel a heightened sense of confidence that the year ahead is going to be a good year. And then this is, I think, probably one of the most interesting parts, and probably more or less where I'm going to focus on. That is, they go from rampart to rampart, appearing before God in Zion. Now, chayil is the word here. Um, and what does chayil mean? Well, it means a couple of things. It can mean uh, a military kind of fortress thing, a rampart in the military sense. But it probably here is invoking the idea that if you've seen the terrain around Jerusalem as you're going through the hills of Judea, it's moving from level to level. And so you're literally climbing and you're invoking this. But then underneath it all is the idea that chayil, which can mean something related to being a soldier, also means strength. And so this has actually become something of an idiom in Hebrew. We speak of, uh, to quote it, it's Michael Lechael. We go from strength to strength. And this is a phrase that is used all the time for Jews wishing to offer a blessing to another Jew. May you go from strength to strength. And that is from the Psalm. and that has become sort of a idiom, like in Texas. Well, bless your heart. Well, no, not with bless your heart. May God bless you, or may you have a blessed day, or something like that. It is a quasi-religious way of speaking, wishing well to your fellow Jew. So from strength to strength. O Lord God of hosts, hear my prayer. We're in 9 now. O God, behold our shield. Look upon the face of your anointed. And that is probably referring to the biblical king or the office of the monarchy. It's a blessing for the state, a blessing for the government, and that is included. And then another famous phrase from this psalm, one day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. Now, the elsewhere is elliptical, but that's the implication that as much as it's wonderful where I live or wherever I've been, this is the best of all possible places. I would rather stand in the threshold of God's house than dwell in the tents of the wicked. Well, that feels a little self-evident. I mean, does that really need to be said out loud? I could be much happier in the tents of the wicked. That's possible. But it's also a lot of discussion has gone into that maybe this text has been corrupted just a little bit, and that tents of the wicked is probably not the right reading. For the Lord God is a sun and a shield, another famous phrase. The Lord bestows grace and glory. He does not withhold his bounty from those who live innocently. O Lord of hosts, happy is the man who trusts in you. And there we see that word that I alluded to earlier, ashrei. Fortunate is the man who trusts in you, which is a counterpoint, sort of a more prosperity-based idea compared to Yedidot at the very beginning, where it is more an expression of intimacy. So it's a lovely psalm, and it's actually packed with phrases we're familiar with, and particularly we have converted some of its language into the language of blessing. Now, I hope each and every one of you takes the opportunity to travel to the land of Israel, to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. It is no longer a mitzvah, but it is praiseworthy. And we live in an age where it is more convenient than ever. And so I urge you, if you have the chance to travel to the land of Israel, take it, even if it's just for a vacation. It's a pretty awesome place. So, and you can recite Psalm 84 as you are flying on El Al or American Airlines and you land in Ben Gurion. So that's it for today. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.